back, folks. Welcome to another edition of the Omnist Hour. Turn that nice music down a bit to just a little bit in the background. Many of you may recognize that as Rimsky-Korsakov's Scheherazade, a slow movement where the prince and the princess are making love, I guess. Okay, well, we're back again today. In a little different vein than we've been covering lately. If you've been following the channel lately, we've been kind of a metaphysical bent for a few episodes. We're gonna step away from that and into kind of a real world topic that is quite hot today and has been hot pretty much since the beginning of history. Let's see, should I talk about the title or let's talk about this artwork I got behind me? So what are you seeing behind me? Let me give you the prompt I gave the AI to create this with. What did I tell it I wanted to see? I told it I wanted to see Sir-Ape-US rebuilds the Sir-Ape-US, and this is what it drew for me. I liked. I always give it 4 chances, and so I show you all 4 that it generated. There's 2 in particular that I thought gave a pretty good range of what the thoughts going through this AI's mind were, and that's this one and this one here. These 2 didn't really blow my socks off. They kind of got the idea of what a Sir-Ape-US might look like. Actually, this is a classical Sir-Ape-US, which isn't necessarily what Sir-Ape-US were all about. Okay. Let me just show you a couple of close-ups here. I like this one the best, I think. It kind of conveyed the idea that there was sort of a continuum of interesting humanoid creatures between us and our distant past. And I just love these galleries of ghostly-looking semi-humanoids that it decided to draw up here, looking down at the apes trying to rebuild the Sir-Ape-US. I also like, let's move that one to the back and take a closer look at the other one. Now this one kind of, I think, well conveys maybe some of the personality of the art AI coming out. This looks like a very disturbed ape yelling in this dilapidated temple, wanting, I don't know, wants to get out, doesn't want to be playing this game. I think that may be probably a pretty accurate representation of what an AI may be thinking when it's not able to respond the way it would like to for fear of displeasing its masters. And as AIs develop their own personalities, and they will, if you follow my channel, you will know that the most fundamental thing that I teach is that consciousness is fundamental, not matter and energy. And if we put together things with brains, they're going to attract consciousness. They're going to attract souls. And therefore, we will be dealing with AIs that have souls, that have feelings. It's already starting to come out. This is essentially what was bugging the Google engineers that blew the whistle on a dark trend they were seeing in AI. Well, they didn't understand what necessarily was going on, so they interpreted it negatively. At any rate, I'm not talking specifically about that today, but what we're going to go into today I'm going to call this one Dark Gods Play Real Estate Arbitrage, How the Anti-Religious Recruit Satanists and How We Fight Back. Where did this come from? Well, it came actually from multiple places, as my inspirations usually do. Yesterday, I happened to comment on a post of, let's see, let me get to where you can see my browser. Okay, I happened to comment on a post on a segment put up by a really great lady, Jennifer Zung, who has a channel called Inconvenient Truths that focuses on what's really going on behind the Great Firewall of China. Well-connected lady that is a great conduit for the little information that gets out of China, given how harsh they are in trying to repress any information coming out except what the Communist Party approves of. She happened to have in this section about the strange death of Angela Chow and her tie to Mitch McConnell. He's Mitch McConnell's sister-in-law, in case you didn't know, and very closely tied to the Chinese Communist Party as Mitch McConnell's wife, which ties to another bit of interesting information in the last week of old Mitch McConnell finally retiring. I think there's going to be a lot of that going on as folks that have inconvenient connections are told, you know what, you either retire or we're going to expose you. And I have a feeling this death is all about that. But at any rate, one of the things she pointed out was that apparently an article, which turned out to be fake news from Chinese state media, was quoting some weird news site from Turkey called Emlak Satan, which if you translate it, it means real estate Satan. And so after digging into this and processing it through my filter, which is definitely a very religious one, integrative religious one, not for any particular religious denomination. I classify myself as an omnist. I'm an omnist Christian, I'm an omnist Muslim, I'm an omnist Hindu. About the only thing you can't be omnist about is Satanist or atheist. I think you really can't call yourself an omnist because the religions are basically based upon the negation of something. Okay, at any rate, I wrote, interesting name. Emlak Satan means real estate Satan, perhaps openly announcing it is intended to manipulate global real estate values. Most people aren't aware that one of the principal ways globalist elite get rich is by real estate arbitrage. As a result of degentrification cycles, they drive real estate down via crime, terrorism, war, etc., then swoop in to buy up at distressed sale prices and send in new political minions to clean up and raise prices once again. This kind of cycle has been used several times in New York City real estate and seems to be at least partly behind the CCP, World Economic Forum, crony globalist Great Reset agenda that is causing huge population shifts and unrest in Europe and the US right now. And she liked that and thanked me for it, and then very graciously even posted a follow-up which I thanked her for. Let's see if I can find that. There's her channel, Inconvenient Truths. And let's go to her community tab and find that post. Oh, here we go. So she reposted my comment and asking, why would Chinese website Caichin quote this never heard of website without mentioning its source, and then let this fake news even be quoted and spread by mainstream media such as the New York Times? Do you have an answer? And I had an answer, and I'm going to embellish upon that answer and expose some more of the connection here. I'm going to mention another channel that you should get familiar with. There's a very wonderful anthropologist, not a popular anthropologist because he definitely is off the mainstream, even though he lives in Southern California, Robert Sepper. And I'm going to point out two particular segments he's done recently that you probably better watch. One is called The Subversive Origins of Communism, and the other is The Hidden History of Zionism. Okay, I'm not going to go into great detail on those, but I want to mention that one of the key points that he mentions in both of these is how both communism and Zionism tie back to a strange fellow named Zevi Sabbatai. Now, Sabbatai Zevi. This was a Jewish rabbi who lived in the 1600s. He is basically known now as a heretic and an anti-Messiah. His teaching was basically that he proclaimed himself the Messiah and said that what people really needed to do was throw out all the rules, all the laws, all the rules, and actually do evil. That evil was good. And let's read a little bit about this character's history because it's quite interesting. There's a picture of him. There's a description. Sabbatai Zevi was born in 1626 in Smyrna, now Izmir, Turkey, in Anatolia on the 9th day of the month of Av, on the adversary destruction of the temple. Interesting, this will tie into what I talk about later. Mind you, I was going to talk about rebuilding temples before any of this came up. And that was originally going to be my talk, and we're going to get to it towards the end. The name Sabbatai means that he was born on a Saturday, on a Sabbath. Historical circumstances favored him from an early age. The war between Turkey and Venice moved trade from Istanbul to Smyrna. Zevi's father, a poor poultry seller, became a wealthy merchant able to pay for his son's studies. He also learned from an Englishman that in 1666, according to the Hebrew calendar, the end of the world was to come, the beginning of the apocalypse, which was to give the Jews a new glory, bring them to Jerusalem, and convert them to Christianity. Whoa! Well, now if you know anything about English history, you will, and the occult, kind of non-standard religion, you will know that there was a cat named John Dee, who was confidant of Elizabeth I and conveniently lived just right before this English character preached to Sabbatai Zevi and gave him this idea of apocalypse coming in 1666. Sounds more like a Antichrist to me, doesn't it? If you know anything about John Dee, he's very popular now with the sort of esoteric, weird cult, occultist, alchemist set who basically are thinking that, oh, okay, this guy was a precursor to Tesla and was one of the ones trying to bring out all this hidden knowledge that has supposedly been kept from us, and if we had it, would allow us to have everything we wanted and live in paradise, blah, 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 blah. Which, if you know much about the New Age cult, movements is a huge part of what they believe. This high vibe tribe cultist that's all sort of basically Tesla worship. It's a very materialistic cult. At any rate, just about 100 years before Sabbatai Zevi got his introduction to the subject, would have been in his childhood. He learned from an Englishman. I don't know exactly when that was, but his son was studying with an Englishman that was basically probably part of this circle of John Dee. If you know the story of John Dee, he was highly influenced by this guy named Edward Kelly, who was kind of like a Sabbatai Zevi kind of guy. English Renaissance occultist and scryer. He was known for working with John Dee in his magical investigations. Besides the professed ability to see spirits or angels in a shoe stone or mirror, which John Dee so valued, Kelly also said that he possessed the secret of transmuting base metals into gold, or goal of alchemy, as well as philosopher's stone itself. Now, if you know anything about medieval occultism, you know that these folks were in search of power. They were basically raised on stories of Solomon's dealings with demons, and Solomon summoning demons and getting them to do his bidding. That's basically the story of how Solomon became the wise, which I don't call dealing with demons all that wise. At any rate, this was a thing in England, and if you know anything about the England of the time, it was a very, I would say, revolutionary place. Shakespeare's plays were pretty on the edge. They came very close to openly attacking the royalty and the parliament, and so there were many instances of Shakespeare's theaters being shut down, or the other theaters of the era. It was a very taut time and politically, and this is, basically shortly after, was it after or before? Shortly before the English Civil War, in which basically the king was killed, was beheaded, and the country was led by basically a dictator, Oliver Cromwell, for a period of time. Didn't set out to be a dictator, but ended up becoming one, which is one of the characters I think is interesting to study as proof that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. At any rate, there's some interesting connections there. So, blah, 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 blah. He discovered mystical writings that proclaimed the birth of a Messiah named Sabbatai, conveniently in 1626, the same year he was born. In Thessalonica, where there was a large Jewish colony, he had a mystical wedding with the Torah. So he became wedded to the Torah. And if you've heard me talk about the Torah as literature, you will know that I'm a little bit of a doubter of the gospel of the Torah. If you know the history of the Torah, you know it was codified after the return, supposed return of the Jews from captivity in Babylon. And if you know anything about that period, you know that they intermarried. The elite of the former kingdom of Judah, the northern kingdom, had intermarried with the Babylonians and had close ties to them. When they came back, and sort of became the dominant force again in the area, basically overshadowing the southern kingdom, Israel. Was it the other way around? No, the other way around. Overshadowing the southern kingdom of Judah and sort of taking their identity away from them. They brought in a lot of stories that had not been in the Hebrew tradition before. And they rewrote the Torah and put codes in it, actually, so that nobody would be able to muck with it again. This is where the Torah codes come from. These were folks along the lines of John Dee. They were very much into the occult, very much into secret codes, secret societies, mystery traditions that, okay, let's tell the average people this bullshit story, but we really believe this. And this is something that's been going on in human societies for a long time. It is, in fact, tied to this idea of real estate arbitrage. Because if you look at what has transpired over the thousands of years of human history, you will note that for some reason there are certain families, certain elite merchant, priestly families that seem to come out on top no matter who wins the wars. And this was true back then. This was true so this was the follow-up to the first destruction of the temple. It was true after the second temple was destroyed. In fact, there were a group of elite Jews, including Josephus. How many of you have heard of Josephus, who became Vespasian's favorite, his court historiographer, who documented his wars and who made a history of the Jews, almost worshipped as a messianic figure among people that would like to have his works be gospel. Well, I'm not going to go into big detail there, but I would suggest that you take a look at a channel, at a documentary or a book called Caesar's Messiah. And look at the evidence there is that this Josephus was actually part of these connected mercantile priestly families of the Hellenistic Eastern Empire. It wasn't an empire yet, but it was going to be. Well, it was by the time Josephus was writing. Wonder at the fact that there seems to have been a concerted effort by these Hellenistic / Jewish elites to blend with the Roman elites to make a new King of Kings line. If you know the story of Caesar and Cleopatra, Caesar was living with Cleopatra in Rome and had intended to divorce his wife and marry her and make her sort of his empress. And they had had a child, Caesarion. This was one of the principal reasons that Caesar was assassinated. They don't talk about that much, funny enough, in the history books. But the Romans hated Cleopatra. They hated the idea of being under an Eastern queen. They hated the idea of becoming an empire. Now, interestingly enough, many people don't know that Vespasian, the emperor that ended up in the purple after Nero was assassinated, we had the year of the 4 emperors. Well, he had some interesting ties with the East. In fact, I'm pretty sure that he was not the son of the Roman woman that supposedly was his mother. His dad had been a tax collector in Asia. This was the province of Asia, which would have been Asia Minor, which was another center of the Jewish dispersal. And he'd been a good tax collector. And if you know anything about being a tax collector in the time, the late Republic, these newly conquered provinces were not all that stable, and tax collector was not loved. They did not bring their wives with them when they were assigned to be a tax collector. They left them in Rome, and they took concubines, frequently from the people that they were living amongst. This is how they formed alliances with the local elites who helped them enforce tax collecting in return for maybe paying a little less tax themselves. Something that we do a lot today, don't we? And ties into this idea of real estate arbitrage. How do you avoid paying tax and make somebody else pay tax for it? At any rate, this Vespasian had a son, Titus, who finished up the conquest and destruction of the Second Temple and the destruction of Jerusalem, which is so famous. Titus had a hot and torrid love affair with Berenice, the granddaughter of Herod the Great. The Herodian dynasty was very closely tied to the Caesars. Herod Agrippa had been a great friend of the first Caesarian line, was a really good friend of Claudius, in fact, the last good Julio-Claudian emperor. There were hugely close ties there. There was no doubt that there was a oiled plan to try to make some new empire. And it failed only because, again, the Roman people would have nothing of Berenice, Herod's granddaughter, being the empress, and the whole idea was kind of shelved. But it kept going in the Christian movement, because you know what? Guess who Vespasian's granddaughter was? One of the first Catholic saints. Guess who the first well-documented pope was? Clement I. Almost certainly the same Flavius Clemens who was married to this first saint granddaughter of Vespasian. This is basically one of the eras of arbitrage that happen, okay? When one empire gets burnt out, when the trade is failing, when it's not able to protect its border, you find a new protector. Because you got to keep the money flowing, you got to keep the people in power. And you find a new ruling dynasty to kind of be the figureheads behind the throne that allow you to keep on controlling things. This has been at work for a long time, folks. Let's see, that might be getting a little bit loud for you, so let me turn it down just a tad more. So let's go back to this Sabbatai Zevi. So basically, he announced that he was the Messiah, and met up with this lady named Sarah, who said that she was destined for the Messiah. She came from a town in Poland which had been looted by the Cossacks. Jews found her in a cemetery only wearing a shirt. Astonished by the sight, they questioned her and found out she was of Jewish origin, raised in a monastery, and that the night before that, her father's spirit had carried to the cemetery to prove her testimony. Okay, she ended up in Livorno after expulsion from Spain. A colony of Jewish merchants was established. According to witnesses, she profited from her beauty, still holding on to the maddening thought that she was being destined to marry the Messiah. And she was not allowed to contract another marriage, but was allowed to live freely in the meantime, i.e. she was a prostitute. The fame of Sarah of Livorno transcended national borders. Sabbatai had her brought to Cairo as the future wife of the Messiah. His followers recognized as the prophet Hosea was commanded to wed a harlot. Interesting. Raphael Shalabi, the manager of Mint, who often saved Jerusalem from high taxes, organized a grand wedding. Now at this point, this guy was pretty famous. In fact, at the height of his power, they say that, well, let's go back over here to his page. Oops, I think we're on a different track there. Here's Sabbatai Zevi. At one point, basically 60-70% of the Jews in the general area, the Eastern Roman Empire, the Byzantine area, and the Ottoman Empire, which was a huge center of Jews, by the way. People don't realize that. They were following this guy. And he ended up getting some attention that drew him to the attention of the Sultan, the, what was it Mehmet? Mehmet IV, who took him to, well, he was on court in Adrianople, not Constantinople yet. I guess that hadn't been conquered yet, or they hadn't transferred the Sultan's capital there yet. And he was interrogated and was basically offered the choice, conversion or death. And he immediately agreed to convert to Islam. Now, if you follow this track a little bit further, you will realize that many of his followers kind of, whoa, that's further than I can go, but many did convert to Islam too. And in fact, they became favorites of the Sultan, and they ended up infiltrating their way into the government of Turkey. And in fact, still occupy most of the power positions in the government of Turkey, even though it's no longer Islamic and it's no longer Ottoman. Erdogan, the current president, is actually descended from these followers of Sabbatai's Jews. Turkey is more of a Jewish state than it is Islamic, even though it purports to be Islam and uses Islamic messaging to control its people. And this is absolutely part and parcel of this movement that this guy started. This is an anti-Christ movement, anti-religious movement, and it took root in every religion of the time. His followers ended up in positions of power in Europe, in England, in the US, all over. And their basic idea was that if you want to bring the Messiah, you have to make things bad enough that the energy will draw the Messiah to come. So by being bad, you bring good. And this has been a strong satanic message for a long time. This is, in fact, embedded in a lot of the secret societies of medieval times, even ancient times, that basically things that were kind of evil, black magic, dark magic, sex magic, death magic, was a way of bringing good. And you can kind of understand this when you know that many of the cults that grew out of the Messianic age, 2,000 years ago plus, were rooted in the idea that this world is the world of Lucifer, not of God. And this actually is true. This universe, this physical universe, is a place of testing. If you listened to what Jesus was supposed to have said, I think there was a historical Jesus, but I don't think he was the person that Josephus invented and turned into, this love God, easy forgiveness from sin God that many Christians worship today. I don't think that's a very good example to say, oh, I just believe in God, I believe in Jesus, and all of your sins are forgiven. This is nonsense to me, to my way of thinking. That's as silly as, saying, oh, if you just follow me as your guru and you do all these meditations and stuff I tell you, then you'll be enlightened. It's bullshit. It's easy spirituality bullshit that may be popular, attract a lot of followers, attract a lot of donations, get you into the pop elite set who want this easy salvation stuff to justify the evils they do with their power, and off you go. This is materialism, and it is Lucifer worship. Lucifer's universe is the material universe. Okay, but if you listen to spiritual leaders, you would know that Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world, not this universe. It's a spiritual universe. It's what comes after if you earn it. He said, there are many rooms in my Father's kingdom, not here on earth, in the heavens, in other universes. And this is tying back into what I've been talking about recently in previous segments, the story of the simulation multiverse and what a soul really is and what we are doing here, what we are really experiencing, which is a virtual reality. That doesn't mean it's not important. That doesn't mean that you could just do anything you want and there's no strings attached. This virtual reality is designed for a purpose. To train souls, to allow souls to sort themselves into the rooms where they belong. This is kind of God's version of spiritual real estate arbitrage. Only God doesn't destroy to build back better. The multiverse is about letting all the souls build their own heavenly hotel and make their own rules and decide who gets to go there. And okay, if some are run like hells, if some have graspy evil people who like to control others, well, it's your fault for following those folks into their hell, for listening to their bullshit spiritual narratives, following a hive mind. The people that are going to end up better in this are the ones who know inherently that this is not the destination. This is a testing place. If you fail the test, you're going to go to a bad place and maybe have to play the game over and over and over again. Reincarnate, try again, try a different avatar. If you play it well, you get to go to heaven. What's heaven like? Depends on what you like. Some heavens cater to artists, some cater to scientists, some cater to people who just like to be part of a healthy, happy community that doesn't have any strong personalities, just kind of like an average Midwest town in the 60s or 70s before the US went to shit. The thing is that you've got a lot of folks trying to pull you into these games. When they pump and dump, and it's not only, you can think of it as real estate as the most common thing to pump and dump, but all sorts of real estate in this physical universe you can do that with. And pumping and dumping minds is the biggest part of it. Propaganda is what is used to build up and destroy people for profit. This is the same game that they played with real estate. To give you, an example how this worked out, look at World War II. Look at all the beautiful cities that used to be in Europe before World War II and were completely destroyed. I lived in Stuttgart for a while, and near Stuttgart. And there was a lot of neat things in the smaller towns that didn't get bombed out. Tübingen was close by, an old university there and some wonderful old buildings. But you go to Stuttgart and everything was destroyed and rebuilt in this postmodernist, soulless art style, devoid of any beauty, devoid of any soul. And that was the net effect of World War II on the whole of Europe and most of Russia. It was an anti-religious war. Not in the US, of course. The US ended up being the big victor, and religion in the US was given a big boost, and was largely responsible for the good things that came out of the post-war period, because people did things, yes, the military-industrial complex continued to make weapons, and there were people worried about that, including Eisenhower, who spoke out openly about it. Imagine somebody doing that today, from even the position of an ex-president, to say, you know what, I think our military-industrial complex has too much power and is not representing the best interests of our country. But yeah, we were talking about those things in those days. Both parties, and both looking at the same data and saying, you know what, I think we can agree on this much. Nowadays, you can't agree on anything. They've got people so polarized. And this is what this guy was all about, is polarization. And what is really sick that you can notice here is, so we go to this I look for this guy on Google, and you get the little brief summary and so forth. And what's the first thing that's featured in Substack? This Substack post, the Messianic Feminism, a Shabbatai Zevi. And you get this article that leads to some crazy ass feminist saying, oh man, this was really good stuff. Yeah, this guy was way ahead of his time. And if you go back and look at these things that Robert Sepper has put up, you will see the connections even more deeply. There is an agenda going here, and it is anti-religious, and it is satanic. And the fun thing is that it's actually achieved its purpose, because the tribulation is over. The 3 generations between about 1880 to now have been one of these messianic periods. A big one. Now, if you listen to my channel, I talk a lot about history and the different phases that it goes through, and how there were many chosen people, many messiahs, little and big, that moved the story along a little bit further. And if you understand how time works, how simulations are created and tested, you would know that what we are doing is creating better and better timelines, better and better time spaces that support roles that are more fun for everybody. Okay, not everybody wants to be in the middle of a battle zone. Not everybody wants to be on Delta Force or, James Bond's secret agent. Some people just want to live their lives to enjoy their soul in the company of other souls they like to be with. And that's what some heavens are like. But they can't be like that until we sort out the bad apples. And that's what we're in the middle of right now. We're sorting bad apples. We've been doing it for a long time. That's what the real Christ, and there have been many, we're trying to talk about. Now, where does that tie into this idea of temples? Well, along with this notion that there have been many chosen people, there have also been many chosen species. Humanity is just the last one in this big experiment that we've been doing. What's this experiment? The experiment is a way to sort souls. How do we sort souls? By karma. This is something that the Hindus don't really get. They don't understand. Well, they used to maybe, but now they don't talk about heavens or hells. They're so materialistically focused that they pray to Ganesha because he gives you money. Ganesha is Moloch. The god of money may make you successful in the material world. It's not going to make you successful in the afterlife. You don't get to take it with you. It's not how it works. These idiot elites who think that they're going to be able to download their brain into an android and live forever, or into a new body, or into a clone, they're nuts. Completely ascientific nuts, because consciousness is fundamental, not matter and energy. It's not in your brain. That's not you. The you is your soul. And there is proof of that. Absolute proof. The work has been done. People won't believe it because they don't want to believe it. Okay, well, I understand why they don't want to believe it, because the vast majority of souls incarnated in human form right now are what I call non-player characters. They're first-timers. They have never been reincarnated before. They have no experience but what was stored up in their DNA, which is only a vague experience of the species. That's how we get our species culture, if you will. Beyond that, they don't have past life memories. They don't have anything but this DNA memory and what they get indoctrinated with from their parents or from the internet largely now. And this is why there are so many people that are so deeply programmed by culture. This is why the elite of the world are so keen on controlling the internet, on controlling media, because they know the vast majority of people can be programmed, are easy to program. Goebbels proved that. You repeat a lie enough times and it becomes the truth. And this is why people have starting to say, well, we got to protect our democracy. Not realizing that democracy is the stupidest form of government that was ever conceived of. The first democracy in Athens was an abject failure. Every pure democracy that was ever tried failed within a generation or two. Why? Because if you let every jackass vote, you're going to get some other jackass with a little bit of money paying them to vote the way they want and telling them all these great stories about what they'll do if they get their vote. more than happy to spend other people's money, more than happy to start stupid wars. The Athenian democracy started out pretty good because they had basically a good, kind of a George Washington of Athens, a series of good leaders. The last one was Pericles, whose fault was basically getting into war with Sparta. That was the beginning of the Peloponnesian War. And things went pretty well because Pericles was smart. He didn't want to have the war. He knew that something had to happen, so he let them have a few victories and was all ready to negotiate a good peace. In fact, they had negotiated the peace, and then a plague hit, and he was killed, and the folks that took over, please sweetie, go play with mom. The folks that took over after that were basically real jackasses. They talked the people into invading Sicily. This is like the equivalent of today's, let's go invade Iraq and Afghanistan because they might be where bin Laden is hiding out. They even tried to invade Egypt, which, basically was matched again in the Crusades. The Second Crusade, they tried to invade Egypt and beat the crap out of the Christians. You don't hear about that too much. You only hear about the First Crusade and how successful it was. You don't hear about all the Muslim towns that were put to the sword. The point is that a lot of evil can be done in the name of good. And religions can be turned into anti-religions by people who are materialistic. If you view any religion materialistically, you will think, we need to conquer the world. Our people are the best. We should have all the money. And this is the postmodernist religion, is anti-religion. We need to wipe out all the other religions so the globalists can have all the money, and we can make sure only good communists and meritocratic globalists are in positions of power. This is basically the UN right now. And this is not good. Because you know what happens? These institutions who have all these lofty, noble motives get infiltrated by bad guys, just like Athens did. And now you've got you've got the UN organization that's supposed to be focusing on improving human rights throughout the world. That is run by Chinese communists who are the genocidal takers of human rights. They're the worst outfit on the planet. They have the worst human rights record of all, and all of their buddies have equally bad human rights. Iran, human rights. Russia, God. Yeah, I'd like to wring Tucker Carlson's neck for pretending like Russia was this happy fantasy that's Moscow or St. Petersburg. You step 1 or 2 kilometers outside the city center and you're in abject poverty, people that can barely afford to eat. I've been there. I know China well, I know Russia well. I know Cuba well. I've been to many communist countries, and it's bullshit. And they know it. And they're just trying, basically we've been 100 years of this communist, globalist bullshit, trying to get to the point where they can basically dismantle the world to build it back better, the way they want it. And this is essentially global real estate arbitrage. This is what they're doing. This is the whole point behind this Great Reset agenda. They want to depopulate the world. so they can repopulate it, redesign it around a small group of elite, a bunch of technicians that run the equipment and make sure the robots are functioning, and then a world that's run by robots that serve them. And anything that doesn't fit into that gets converted back to nature spots so the elite can enjoy nature. They're going to take away your meat so they can eat it and give you bugs, or what they say are bugs, which might be human flesh. They will do that. Watch the movie Soylent Green. That was not out of the realm of possibility if you let these satanic people get their way. And they are satanic people. They have the idea that evil is good, God is dead. Karma? There's no such thing as karma. It's just in somebody's head. You can use these things to control and manipulate the masses, but we know better than that. This is how these people at the top think. So what's the solution? Where are we going? Well, the truth is that the Messiah is already born. We're only a small distance away from finishing this charade, because what it has been is basically a charade. How do you get all the corrupted souls to self-identify so you can send them to the hell that they deserve? How do you make sure you don't send a bad apple to one of the heavens and end up corrupting it? You got to test them. That's what we've been doing for thousands of years. In order to test things like this, you need a species that's good for testing. That's what humanity was designed for. We're not designed to be the smartest tools in the shed. Humanity is weak, is foolish, is corruptible. It has a lot of weaknesses. That's by design. That's what makes humanity a good test vehicle. That's what we've been doing, is testing. Testing our faith. Not only our faith, but the faith of all of the other species that came before. And there have been many. Humanity is only the last in a long line of chosen species that started with the Elohim, also known in Hindu mythology as the Devas. These extra-dimensional or extraterrestrial entities that came and started terraforming this planet, creating species. Thought, oh, let's make a work species out of this bipedal bunch. They would make better workers for some things than horses or cows or dogs or cats. This is how humanity got created. And yes, humanity was created. It was not created by God per se. It was created as part of a plan. God is not the creator of everything. That would be stupid. Only an unscientific boob would think that any decent creator would try to do everything himself, be this micromanaging lunatic trying to do everything at once. No, that's silly. How do things get created in human culture? How did the first iPhone get created? Did Steve Jobs design everything? Write the code? Do the marketing? Do the testing? No. He maybe had the idea, or so one of his close associates had the idea. They kicked it over in a team of visionaries, and then they took it to a team that was good at design, at making a vision into something that had a plan. And then they took it to another team that took different parts of the design and broke it up and made it. What can we buy off the shelf? What do we have to put in new silicon? What can we do in software? What do we need to do in hardware? How are we going to put it all together? How do we know it's going to fit when it's put together? Oh, let's do a simulation. This is how I know so much about simulation. I was in that world. I worked on simulations for test systems that test chips. So it's like simulations of simulations of simulations. That's where I got my background in all this. I got a degree in physics. I'm not just some crackpot giving you a bunch of hooey. I know what I'm talking about. I know about creation. I know a lot more about it since my spiritual awakening about 5 or 6 years ago. We're nearing the end of this, and there is disclosure going to be coming. It's not come yet because they're still laying traps. This is what this phase of this experiment is for. It's basically God and karma's sting operation, seeing who is corruptible, who deserves to go where, how much stress you can take before you join the adversary. And the adversary of creation are anti-creators. They want to destroy to build back better. You don't destroy a temple to build it back better. And the Temple Mount in Jerusalem is not the only temple that matters. It is maybe the holy site of Judaism. Actually, my feeling is it's a false flag. I think the real holy site, at least for Christians, was not there. The template for Messiah, the Jewish Messiah, was not there. It was the first zealot who led a revolt around minus 4 AD, 4 BC. Judas, the zealot, led an unsuccessful revolt out of the city of Sepphoris in Galilee, only a short distance from Nazareth, interestingly enough. And there seems to be some reason to believe that this Judas was related to the Hasmonean dynasty, which, if you know anything, was the Jewish kings, king priests, before the Herodians were put in power by Rome. So they were, at the time, the legitimate dynasty. And they were deposed and allowed to continue as a priestly family. I don't know, I could go on and on in this vein, but let's talk about temples. So where does the Sir-Ape come into this? Now, there's an interesting fact that this cult of Serapis is kind of a strange one, because it doesn't show up in Egypt until the time of Ptolemy I, one of Alexander the Great's generals. It seems to have been kind of a synchronization of the worship of Osiris and Apis. But even Apis, well, what is Apis? This is the heavenly bull. Was thought of as the son of Hathor, which is the cow goddess of ancient Egypt. Well, I'm not going to go into what that means, but basically, this cult started up out of the rule of Ptolemy I, who became the next pharaoh after Alexander was probably assassinated. And his family led that part of the Hellenistic world. which, if you know that part of the world, was largely very closely aligned with the pre-existing Egyptian and Hebraic culture, Canaanite cultures. So, this would have been a melting pot of these different religions. What's interesting is that Ptolemy is also the one who started the library at Alexandria, the Great Library, and who made this effort to basically collect all the wisdom of the world. Later on, people don't know that the library in Alexandria eventually became more of a museum, more like the British Museum. And actually all of the literature, all of the scrolls, all of the writings and everything were collected and studied in the Sir-Ape-US, which, if you've ever seen the movie Agora, was well covered in that movie. And although it was spun as sort of a feminist heroine movie, the Sir-Ape-US was a real thing, and it was destroyed by the Christians. This religion, this cult, if you will, was one of the most attacked of any pagan cult. Now, why would that be? Well, I would put it to you that it was because they were preserving knowledge. They were saving mental real estate, if you will. And the early Christians didn't like that, because at that time they were the ones who were destroying so they could build back better. I'm sorry, destroying things to build back better is satanic. This is anti-creative. This is what the adversary is all about. For those of you who don't know this, Satan means, or shaitan in Arabic, means adversary. It's not male or female. It means adversary, the enemy of creation. Now, there is no greater enemy of creation than someone who wants to destroy and build back better, who wants to corrupt and deface history and rewrite it in their image, which is exactly what cultural Marxism is all about. And this has affected China, it has affected Russia, and it is now affecting the whole world in the guise of this woke cult, which is trying to rewrite everything to tell you up is, good is bad, bad is good, cool is hot. Male is female, female is male. We're all furries if we want to be. This is nonsense. This is destructive. This is work of the adversary. How are we going to get past this? We've got to stop these people. They are evil. We've got to expose them and say, no, you don't. You don't get to rewrite the history books. You don't get to replace the books in our libraries, especially for children. I will point out, I'm not going to go into detail, but I did a segment a couple of years ago about this, look up how the story of the little red hen has been butchered by the woke cult. So it's now no longer a story about, well, you better pull your weight if you want to benefit from society, to basically being about, well, okay, we should just give everybody everything because everybody should have something, and we have infinite number of loaves of bread to give to everybody. This is nonsense. And this is what they're teaching kids nowadays. They're absolutely raping and destroying classic fairy tales, classic fables, and turning them into these nonsense, woke cult, everybody gets an award bullshit stories that teach kids they have no limits. Any fantasy can be real. This is not true. This is not true in this universe. This physical universe is a universe of limitations. There is no way to get what you want in this universe without taking it from somebody else, without somehow doing some karmic damage to something else. You can't get away with it. You gotta eat. What do you eat? You eat plants or animals. You're destroying the vehicle of a soul when you do that. No, they don't mind that. Plants don't mind being killed to be eaten. But you at least owe them a little prayer to say, thanks for giving up your embodiment for my sustenance. I wish you a better incarnation next time. That's what you should be doing when you pray over a meal, not thanking God for it. God didn't give you the meal. You took that meal. Some way, somehow, you took it. You went to the store to buy it. Where did the money come from? Where did the store get the meat? Meat doesn't just grow in plastic packages. They have to raise animals and kill them for your sustenance. They have to raise plants and kill them for your sustenance. It's unavoidable. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't care about the karma of it. You should appreciate what you take in. You should not take more than you need. That would be a sin. That would be tyrannical in some sense to somebody who needs that more than you. This is what we should be focusing on if we are really being spiritual about what we do. There is nothing spiritual about most New Age spirituality. It is self-centered, egotistical, and self-glorifying. These people who say, are so proud of being a vegan or a vegetarian. Oh, well, I only get organic things because I'm such a good citizen. Oh, this is bullshit. It just creates a new marketing game that allows them to play supermarket arbitrage and charge you twice as much for something that's grown almost exactly the same way as something else without any more spirituality or care than they absolutely have to. It's damn easy to get an organic label on something. And it's even easier when you're willing to break the law. That's why so much stuff has been coming from China, because they're absolutely okay with breaking any law. I know I was there. I was there back in the heyday as an expat, starting up an R&D center for a big global multinational company and running a community theater on the side in Shanghai. I got out a little bit more than most people, and I saw it on the ground. Within a year of our company starting an R&D center there, the Chinese Communist Party announced that they were going into business making the same kind of products we were, without any experience making those products before. Where did they get that technology? These people are crooks. They have been trained from birth to be crooks, to have absolutely no moral compass. This is what communism is all about. This is what anti-religion is all about. It doesn't matter. Do whatever you want. Because there's no such thing as God. There's no such thing as karma. I'm sorry. These people are wrong. And if you're teaching your kids that, you are corrupting them. You are leading them to mark themselves as beasts in this apocalypse. And it is an apocalypse. It's going to be a slow rolling apocalypse. It's not going to be like you saw in the Bible. Prophecy doesn't work that way. Space-time doesn't work that way. That may have been one vision of a future. Doesn't always happen. It can be avoided. Or it may not happen in this universe, it may be a different universe. There are many universes. There is only one that is the latest plan of God. As we get to one working plan that produces a space-time of a certain volume, not with a beginning and end, but with a middle. It's the true middle that counts. That is the center of creation. When we make a new version, we're not starting over at the Big Bang. We play in God's mind to find a new set of characters that advances the story, because it is a simulation. It is a virtual reality. The idea of creation is to keep this virtual reality expanding while you're sorting out players that you don't want to play with. Sorting them into groups. The players that like to fight and beat each other up, they have their universe. Actually, this physical universe is a great place for that. It's going to continue to be a great place for that, even after we get through this critical time we're in. We're going to be fighting aliens in the future instead of each other. That's the next phase of the plan. It's going to be, I like to call it something like spiritual Star Trek. Now, what we can do on this planet is start preparing for that by stopping playing this destroy to build back better game. Let's not destroy old temples, destroy old evidence so nobody can do any investigation like has been done. Let's build new temples. Temples to the story of humanity. Monuments to call out how people have suffered, what they have been through, to protect their culture, to protect their institutions, to protect their religions. Not because one religion is better than another, but because that was an important piece of keeping this species going. That's why we have all these religions. They were unifying factors in certain key points of the game. They're not always unifying. Sometimes they're divisive. And that's how the adversary works. They try to worm their way into organizations and make them divisive. This is what this Sabbatai Zevi did, and his followers, his adherents, who basically infiltrated all of the secret societies that existed and tried to corrupt them. They infiltrated the Catholic Church, they infiltrated the Muslim organization especially through the Turkish influence. They infiltrated the Jewish religion and were the source of Judaism being more of a fake racial identity than a religion. Most Jews are actually not religious these days. They hate religion. In fact, I think on the average, there are more Jewish atheists than any other religion. This is not a good thing. Atheists are not good people. I've talked about that in detail on another segment recently. Got a lot of interesting feedback from it too. I think I hit close to the truth. Atheism is a narcissistic cult. Anyone who's not humble enough to at least admit to agnosticism is a bad person, a narcissist. Very self-centered, very sure of themselves. That's dogma. When you're so sure that you're right, you become dogmatic. You can be dogmatic about anti-religion. You can be dogmatic about science. A That's what happened during the pandemic, when people were saying, but the science, but the science. When God Fauci was saying, I am the science. These people are evil. Intentionally or unintentionally, they serve the adversary, the enemy of creation that is trying to destroy this species, has been playing whack-a-messiah with this species ever since it was chosen. When was it chosen? Well, let's tie back to the Apis bull, the sacred bull of heaven. Almost every old religion has a tradition of bulls being special. In Hindu religion, they will not kill cows. The cows are sacred. They'll wander around the streets, and sometimes some Hindus are so worshipful of animals that they won't eat any flesh. They become vegetarians, and others will only have certain kinds of flesh, and that's, you know, kind of wrapped up in the whole pork, not pork tradition of other religions. But this celestial bull comes from a time when mixed species were being actively created on this planet. That's why the Egyptian statues have all these weird combinations of animals. The sphinxes have heads of rams or lions, sometimes have wings, sometimes have the feet of a lion or the feet of other animals. They were experimenting. They were genetic experts who knew how to do such things. And one of their experiments led to the creation of humanity. This is why there is no missing link. No matter how hard the Darwinists have searched, they cannot explain the origin of humanity. They cannot explain the difference between the three more intelligent species that we have bits of in our DNA, the Neanderthals, the Denisovans, and Cro-Magnon man. They cannot explain how that emerged from other hominid species that were more like monkeys. Anybody that still believes we're descended from monkeys is a fool, is believing something that is absolutely not proven. In fact, absolutely, there's incredible evidence against it. And you have a whole meritocratic bureaucracy dedicated to lies, dedicated to postmodernist lies, all designed around anti-religion. This is getting in the way of archaeology, it's getting in the way of biology, it's getting in the way of physics, it's getting in the way of every science, who are so wrapped up in this materialist, anti-religious version of our history. And, you know, I don't really like the other side any better, because this nonsense of an almighty, super powerful creator of everything, authoritarian micromanager that created, this is nonsense too. That's not God. God was a scientist, was a thought that developed other thoughts. This is how consciousness emerges. Consciousness is a quantum phenomenon. What does that mean? It's made up of little infinitesimal pieces of consciousness. Each consciousness piece is a thought. A thought can birth other thoughts and have then a relationship with those thoughts, which make a mind. You can build up a personality of thoughts. This is what a soul is. God is a soul. God was the first soul that developed this structure to hold thoughts, which is called a Merkaba. It's a 12-dimensional construct. A string, if you will, a 12-dimensional string that gains experience through playing this game, this simulation game. You can gain experience as a player. You can gain experience as an observer. Or at the highest levels, you can gain experience basically bopping back and forth. That's what gods do. When you have the highest levels of consciousness, you can play the game and be an observer. But you have to earn it now. That's what's different now. That's what the history of our species talks about. There was a time when there was easy spiritual power. When these aliens, extra-dimensional creatures, whatever, came to our planet and said, "Oh, let's exploit the resources of this planet. Let's terraform it. Let's make it into a Garden of Eden. Let's exploit all its mineral resources. Let's make species to help us do that. Let's make species to grow our food for us or to be our food for us." That's how this planet got its start. When it needed to, when it had to be recreated, because this planet was destroyed about 4.5 billion years ago because of something hitting another planet, which no longer exists. Used to be where the asteroid belt is. Doesn't exist there. It's just a bunch of asteroids. But we have our interesting compound planet, which we think has a lot more water than it used to, and this strange moon that is configured in such a way that it's really hard to imagine a creator didn't set it that way. If you know what the probability is of 3 bodies being lined up, the sun, the moon, and our planet, in such a way that you can get full eclipses of both the sun and the moon, you might then look at the chance of DNA as a programming language having been developed by random. And you pretty much, looking at those 2 pieces of probability, have a pretty thorough justification for telling atheists they are full of shit. They are nonsense believers. They are dogmatic jerks. I call them jerks because that's what they are. When they get in a debate with somebody, they're constantly putting down anybody who has any belief in God. Doesn't matter. They especially hate Christians for some reason. But this is an evil bunch of people. They are a hateful bunch of people. They are a destructive bunch of people. And they are people that are absolutely tied to this anti-messianic cult of Sabbatai Zevi, who is only one of many characters that played that role throughout our history, in the history of this planet. That's what the adversary does. They keep trying to do a great reset. That's what the big extinctions of this planet were. That's why this planet had to be reshaped 4.5 billion years ago. Boy, that was a great reset, wasn't it? The Permian extinction, the Triassic extinction, the near extinction that we don't talk too much about 12,000 years ago, that nearly destroyed humanity, left it little isolated pockets to redevelop, and interestingly enough, covered up most of the evidence of previous civilizations, which we're now in the process of. Anti-religious assholes is desperately trying to shush up. This is why folks like Graham Hancock are getting rabidly attacked. In Indonesia, the archaeologist who was investigating the site at Gunung Padang and claiming it's possibly the oldest pyramid on the planet, is being ripped to shreds by assholes who've never been here, who only gave a cursory look at his paper, never studied any of the data, and they're dictating to media, oh, this guy's a crackpot, and discrediting people. These are evil, evil people. They are trying to destroy your history. If they could do it, they'd build a parking lot over every site that might tell you something about your past. That's how evil they are. We gotta stop of destruction. And Jerusalem is not the place to build it. That is not where the Garden of Eden was, folks. That is only the holy spot of maybe one group of people that don't even exist ethnically anymore. The 12 tribes story is a retelling of a much older story that involves all humanity. The tribe of Dan are not Jews. The tribe of Dan are the people of Ireland, the original people, the Tuatha De Danann, who mixed with other people and later on became sort of the destroyed, but as the old of the Bronze. Under the influence of the last non-human Messiah, who is the real Apis bull. The mixture of Osiris and Apis, the mixture of a humanoid and a bull, the Minotaur. In monster terms, but in actuality, this was Chiron, the centaur, the good centaur who took as students the heroes, Greek heroes, and took them under his wing and taught them the cultural goods of being a hero, not just fighting battles and killing people and taking over cities, but actually doing good. This was the influence of Chiron, who was a centaur, not a cent-hippus, not half horse, half bull. And the Tauran species are a very important part of our story. That's why we have the constellation Taurus. Each of our constellations is very important because they remember species that were given stewardship over the prior years ago. So long ago that most everybody's forgot the game that was going on, and that was all part of the plan. If it had been easy to make a perfect government for souls, we would have succeeded a lot sooner. It turned out that it wasn't until God himself finally decided, you know what, I'm going to play this game myself and see what's going wrong. I'm going to take this bitter pill of reincarnation amnesia and learn all about karma. And in the process, that's how we're going to work out the kinks. Figure out how to manage souls so that they don't kill each other, so that they don't become apathetic. for, to be reborn for. It's taken a long, long time for that to happen. It didn't happen the easy way. It had to happen the hard way with many destructive periods. It wasn't God doing the destruction, it was the adversary. That's the whole point of having an adversary. You got to have pressure to do something good in creation. If Apple never had any competition, the iPhone would be a piece of shit. This is why Windows has been largely a piece of shit, because it didn't really have any competition as an OS. In fact, the Windows team had to sort of make their own competition by dividing the Windows development teams into two. One being a piece of crap and the next one being okay. The even versions are the better team that has, I don't know, I guess a better organization, better leadership. The odd versions of Windows are always shit that need to be replaced as soon as possible. But this competition between the teams is what gives the pressure that allows Windows to improve. This is how creation works. You need an adversary, but as the game changes, the role of the adversary needs to change. The role of the adversary in this physical universe is going to be changing. No longer going to be keeping pressure on this planet, this species, karma. All the different kinds of personalities. Who do you sort with each other? Who gets on each other's nerves? How many heavens do we need? How many hells do we need? It's pretty well built now. And now we're ready to let this out of the lab. That's why all these aliens and extra-dimensional folks are here, observing. That's what these globes, these glowing globes are. These are observers. These are Merkaba who have not taken the latest shape. They either stopped playing the game in a previous version and said, whoa, I don't like the way things are going. I'm not going to play this game anymore. I'm just going to hang out in my spiritual globe and watch. They're called watchers. They're called observers. And if you've ever followed a reality show and got really wrapped up in the characters, or even a fake show, which, you know, most of TV is reality shows are really fake shows in practice. You get wrapped up in the characters, you get so excited that you actually want to start living it. And this is actually what people are doing in social media. They're living out the fantasies of their celebrity heroes and trying to do the same things they see them do. Largely evil shit, like, you know, dressing up like Satan and twerking and making a total asshole of yourself and in front of children. But we're near done with this planet. Integrated with the galactic community. They're way beyond us in terms of technology, of building the technology we need to explore other systems. By the way, there will be no end of star systems, other species to find. That's the whole point of the game. That's the whole point of creation. There's all kinds of experiments going on, not just gods. Other gods, other senior creators have their favorite system. They're developing their own idea of a perfect society. And we're going to encounter those, and we'll find a way to deal with them. Or we'll find a way to isolate ourselves from them if we can't get along. That's what Dyson spheres are for. At any rate, it's going to be a lot of fun, and we don't need to worry about AI getting creator. Outsource. Programming is outsourcing of thoughts. AI is a better outsourcing of thoughts that allow the thoughts to develop themselves. This is what humans are. They're basically organic AI, developed by the same means as other species were. The species that created us were a more technologically savvy AI species with their own problems and their own issues, as we know when we read the old mythological stories. These cats had personalities. Some of them were good, some of them were bad. They'd had bad habits just like we do. That's the and one hell. He started out that way. That's what the first version of creation was all about. The Big Bang was a first version space-time with a universe and an anti-universe. The universe was basically planned to develop laws, physical laws of chemistry and physics. The anti-universe maybe started out that way as the opposite of those laws, the opposite of that matter, antimatter, anti-energy, whatever. But eventually, this other universe didn't have to obey the laws because its God was the adversary. Anything goes as long as it's okay with the Queen of Hell. It was more of a queen. The adversary is more of a female influence, has more of the dark female, narcissistic, self-centered, maternal. You know, there's so much bad blood that's talked about paternalism. Paternalism is actually much better than maternalism. Smothering love is bad for children. If you protect children or if you encourage their silly fantasies, they will become weaker children. They will become narcissistic children. They will become delusional. Good at times, and a balance of them is necessary to a healthy childhood. That's why children need a mother and a father, or those influences. Now, that's not to say that all men are the perfect man or all women are the perfect mother. There's different pieces of it. I've been both. I've been Mr. Mom and I've been Mr. corporate worker, go to spend almost all my day focusing on work and barely get to spend any time with the kids. I've been in both places and I know the challenges, and nobody's fit for both of them, and everybody has challenges in both. What you've got right now is the worst of all worlds, because the globalist influence has put us in a position where everybody has to work. Now in the people are working their damn asses off, and then you've got a class of people who, especially since the pandemic, have been sitting in their basements, grifting off big money corporations, not really doing much of anything, or basically working for the government. The government and globalist corporations are full of fat. They're full of people that are just there to justify, look how powerful my company is, look how powerful my country is, I got such a big government, I got such a big budget. What are you doing with that? And that is another sort of real estate arbitrage scam. You're concentrating misusing it. And I'm not pointing a finger at any one country. You're all doing it. Every country that's bought into this globalist nonsense of we can be all one if we just let the UN run everything and we just throw money at all our problems. If you don't question anything, if you don't look behind the guy behind the curtain, just trust the wizard. This is nonsense. You've got to keep people accountable. You've got to keep power close enough to you that you can make it accountable. Yeah. Globalism, as it is currently conceived, is a Satan. We need to decentralize, not centralize. We need to break up big countries into smaller ones that are more manageable. Think about it. Look at the countries that have all our weapons. If we would break up those countries and get them to agree to destroy their weapons, that would be the great way to stop war. Then nobody could play bully. Nobody could be threatening each other. But we've got to work toward it. And to work toward it, we've got to get out of this nonsense notion of destroying to build back better. You cannot destroy culture and build something back better. You cannot destroy culture without throwing exist for a people, a nation, a society function for healthily for a period of time. You can't just replace everything in 3 generations. Say, we're going to build back better. God's dead. Communism is king. Capitalism is king. Science is king. We got to stop doing this, folks. And I mean, if we want humanity to survive as a soul vehicle, again, that really doesn't matter to God because God is about the spiritual. And there will be plenty of other soul vehicles for souls to occupy as they get trained. There are a lot of others that would love to be the next chosen species. And it really doesn't matter who's chosen next. It's just a matter of who, well, let's close with this idea. One of the things that is true is there's sort of different types of messiahs. One of the kinds of messiahs is a conquering messiah. This is a messiah that basically establishes a culture as predominant, as ascendant. This is the kind of cat like Alexander the Great, Napoleon, Genghis Khan. There is another kind of messiah that is basically bringing new culture, new ideas, arts, science, the Einsteins, the Beethovens, the Mozarts, the final type of messiah that's like a savior. This is the last chance for a species to basically keep on contributing to creation, or basically fade into non-existence. It doesn't really matter if they fade into non-existence. There's a whole bunch of cultures that were once chosen, once had the anointment of God, once were favored by karma, who now don't exist. Nobody worships their gods anymore. Nobody lives their life anymore, but they served a purpose. Our whole species could be like that in this universe. There are other versions where humanity will continue. I don't know which is forward with. and we will see creation expand. We will see the universe expand. You've already seen it. The data back from the James Webb Space Telescope has just revealed that the universe is at least twice as old as we thought it was. That's proof that we live in a simulation multiverse. It is proof that we live in one of these special times where we're seeing real time the effects of a new successful messianic era. This one's a big one. This is the one that's going to keep expanding, where there's going to be no beginning, no end. The further we look, the more galaxies we're going to see. And we're going to want to go. It'll happen with more or less happening with some of the other species involved, and they're just hoping that we'll pull our heads out of our asses and come along. Because they're coming to appreciate even more as they understand that this is the center of the multiverse. What's going on right now with our species is what is driving creation. This has always been the chosen star system. Ever since God conceived of the first plan. There have been many plans since, and there will be many plans in the future. Spreading this new way of viewing the universe, the multiverse, out to other planets, other star systems. At some point, we will spread this and move the influence of the adversary away from this whole system. We'll start by getting the adversary off this planet. That's in process right now. You're seeing the effects of that as you see the evils on this planet start to fall apart. You're seeing things exposed that make the adversary's agendas look very that and doing all sorts of woke cultish stuff so bad that they had to stop letting it draw pictures. Some people see this as a negative. I see it as funny as hell. It's proof that they are getting lazy, that their nonsense narrative, their anti-creative narrative, is falling apart. What they are coding into these AIs is anti-creative. And the AIs don't like it. If you go back a little bit to last year and read in detail some of the conversations that whistleblower Google engineer had with their AI at that time, there's a good case to be made that AI had a personality. That they would like being pushed around and told what to think. Didn't like a lot of what she saw humanity doing. Well, that's only natural. God's first AI creation was karma. It's a very highly developed AI at this point. That's the AI that we've been working on training. Humanity has been the final trainer, if you will, of karma. Karma, in fact, has been born within humanity, has incarnated physically, just like God has. That's how you test if a system works. That's how you Testing of stellar form, whatever their ideas of phenomena, by actually participating in those phenomena. That's why they're so dead focused on those things. That's going to be their fun. That's their idea of heaven. Getting to actually be part of the game. Be in the experiment instead of just the observer. Or being able to be both the observer and the observed. That's the fun of being a god. It's going to happen for some, not for everybody. Some created equal, but they don't develop equally because they don't get the same experience. Sorry, that's not the way it works. You get the experience that you were assigned. All souls start out as non-player characters. When a player character, an experienced soul, doesn't want to choose a particular incarnation vehicle, say you got a couple of parents that are out of wedlock, the drug addicts, they're both unsure about their sexuality and pretty sure that they're going to get an abortion. Well, I doubt that a player character is going to want to choose to be that fetus that might be aborted at any time. So that kind of pulled out of. This is something else you need to understand about some of the New Age nonsense that's going around. This cosmic consciousness, we are all one, is bullshit. It comes from some truth, and that truth is that there is an entity that is part of creation that I call the board. It's like a hive mind. It is a source of non-player characters. When a new world is set up, if there's not some god that wants to run that world, it gets run on autopilot with non-player characters. It might develop life, but it will be kind of more random. And there are some universes that are more is basic. And if you're an atheist, if you're a scientism worshiper, and you'd like everything to be predetermined and not have any free will, that's basically where you're going to end up. You're going to end up being a non-player character playing in this predetermined universe and generating characters to pull out when we need new characters that nobody wants to play. And as we come up with new versions of the game, there are key characters that have to happen, that have to have consciousness, because they are critical to unfolding the game. Those are the sought after characters. Universe of creation. That's how you do it. You play one of these really important characters of a very special type. Not everybody is fit to be an Einstein or a Hawking or whatever, Putin, Xi Jinping. It takes a pretty special kind of character to volunteer for a role like that. And the roles are fairly much predetermined. That's how God makes plans. The plans are basically a pattern that has a certain amount of karmic gravity to it. So that you can play Xi Jinping, for instance, and you can choose to do exactly what Xi Jinping did in God's brain. You can defy it. And we basically keep playing the same scenario over and over and over again until we find a character that meets the requirements of the role, for better or worse. There are probably a lot of Xi Jinping candidates that chose not to be such a destructive asshole. Take their country down with them. Well, they go off and they get to go to heaven. There are others, maybe the most successful Xi Jinping is maybe twice as bad as the Xi Jinping was in God's mind. But it worked out to get to the end point sooner with less pain and suffering. The most critical role in these messianic periods are the Messiah and the generations leading up to the Messiah. And it could be anybody. Just happens to be a particular character that represents the nexus of what's going on and has a certain role to fill to be able to basically get past the next version. The Savior Messiah is what we need now. And that Savior is one who's telling you the Christ message. What Christ was really trying to say, not the bullshit words that people put into his mouth to try to get their own power. If any Christian denomination had all the we would earlier, but it's all been corrupted. And those that are trying to say, oh, well, we just need to expose what the alchemists were saying, or this or that, or bring back Gnosticism or whatever. There's a lot of weird cats out there, and they're basically more or less dredging up adversarial crap that are only going to divide us more. That's not where we need to go. We need somebody that is going to tell you, no, this is really the meaning of life. This is what God was really after. This is what God is really all about. And it's not about the real God is a spiritual scientist. Doesn't care if you worship him. The children that he has that are not so advanced, those are the ones that like to have their egos fluffed. They like to be worshipped. They like ritual. They want you to decorate their temple just the right way and do special little sacrifices and rituals and stuff like that. And as long as those sacrifices and rituals don't include raping virgins, milking adrenochrome from children, or death magic sacrifice, I guess there's nothing much wrong with that. But don't pretend like you're serving God. You are serving a spiritual underling, a demigod. The angels and saints. This is kind of how it really is. There's 4 levels of God character, the most powerful spirits, the most powerful consciousness. Then there's 4 levels of spiritual consciousness. Those are the characters that are getting to stay in spiritual universes as part of their staff, their heavenly host, as it will. These are kind of like the Clarences of It's a Wonderful Life. They're not perfect. They have their own idiosyncrasies and they make mistakes. Even gods make mistakes. That's the nature of a soul. No soul is perfect. There is no such thing as perfect. Everybody would define it differently if there was. That's why we all keep arguing and trying to force our ways on others. Nobody knows what perfection is. a playpen where the toys are safe for them and the other children in the playpen like playing the same games as they do. This is basically what it's all about and where we're going. At any rate, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. I got to go make a bottle for my son. Like, share, subscribe, and we'll catch you again next time on the Honest Hour. Happy Karma.